and welcome to the Roster Royale podcast. I'm your host, Hamar Bashab, and let's get started. So today I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I wanted to continue with some My Guys. People have been hitting me up telling me they want to hear about some more My Guys. Also going to do a little preseason recap, talk about some players whose stock is up and some players whose stock is down. Also, we're going to talk about players that I love getting, that ties into the My Guys. Also, players that I think drafters are going to regret getting at their current ADP, as well as one or two sleepers from each team. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start off with the stock up and stock down. So the first thing I wanted to mention would be the Marquise Lee injury. Unfortunately, he's out for the year, so obviously his stock is down. And in a corresponding move, the stock is up for Keenan Cole, Dante Moncrief, and the D.D. Westbrook and the whole wide receiver core outside of Marquise Lee. So Keenan Cole was already a starter, so this is just to entrench his role even more so. Moncrief basically comes in and becomes the starter opposite Keenan Cole, with D.D. Westbrook staying in his slot role. DJ Chark is the one outside looking in, but he does have the most upside. More on him later. Right now, Keenan Cole, I love getting him later in rounds. I think Moncrief is an okay grab right now, but still think DJ Chark is the better long-term play. D.D. Westbrook, though, he's gonna have his role entrenched because he's the slot guy, and Westbrook has a good connection with Bortles. He actually was the one that was targeted on that fourth down against the Patriots, so Blake had the faith in him to target him with their season on the line. So more on Keenan Cole, though. People forget that over the last 5 weeks of the season, he had the most yards in the NFL. The last 5 weeks of the 2017 NFL regular season, he had the most yards out of anyone. Next up, let's talk about the Bengals. Talk about Tyler Eifert, the often injured tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals. The thing with him is, if he can stay healthy just a little bit, they can use him as a red zone threat. We've seen him before score like 2 or 3 touchdowns in certain games, so he could definitely be a usable fantasy asset this season. Problem is, he's appeared in just 10 games over the past 2 years, missed 40 games over the past 4, but right now he seems to be healthy. Bill Lazor gets a full season this offseason with the offense, so that offense should improve. He's someone that's decent at if you're streaming the position, and he scored 18 touchdowns in 21 games across 2015 and 2016. So like I said, red zone monster. It was exciting to see him in the preseason. He ran 13 pass routes. He pass blocked 0 times, and he ran block once. So they're clearly using him in just a receiving role. They don't want him to get hurt. He started and he played 14 of 26 first string snaps, but we don't want him out there on the running plays, so this works good. So as long as he's just there for receiving, he could be a useful fantasy asset. With people focused on AJ Green and Mixon and John Ross, it should be fruitful for him, because if you think about it, with John Ross's speed, people are going to have to play off of him a little bit. That allows some space underneath, and I've always said it's going to help Mixon. It's also going to help Tyler Eifert. Next up, we have a little stock down for Sammy Watkins. I know it's a preseason, so I'm not too worried, but the way things shake out in the preseason, there might be a little cause for concern. He played 67 first-string snaps, but he only caught 1 ball for 14 yards on 7 targets. Meanwhile, Tyreek Hill played 64 first-string snaps, caught 14 catches for 182 yards and a touchdown. I mean, Watkins is definitely going to be more involved in that in the regular season, but if you were to take all things considered, he's probably still behind Kelsey Hill and Hunt even out of the backfield. As of right now, things can change over the season. I still like him, though. They paid him a big amount of money, so they want to use him in a variety of ways. But if you were debating between him and someone else and that you were trying to separate them, this could be the thing that separates them on draft night. Another player stock up, though, is Emmanuel Sanders. The Broncos haven't had like a good wide receiver 3 in a while. Now they have Cortland Sutton, and he's playing on the outside. We've talked about this before, which kicks Emmanuel Sanders, into the inside. So in those base 3 wide receiver sets, Sanders is playing in the slot, so this preseason his slot rate is up to 64%. Last year it was only 26%. And if you watched football last year, you saw Case Keenum. He loved throwing to Thielen in the slot. And so if you watch preseason as well, this year he's finding Sanders a lot. The first 3 games, Sanders has run 37 routes, and he got 14 of 32 targets, of Case Keenum's targets. And Demaryius Thomas has run 25 routes, and he has 4 of 32. So that's just something where it's just based on the quarterback play. Even though Demaryius is a better wide receiver, and he does have higher upsides because of his touchdown, the PPR guy that's probably going to be better, in terms of relative ADP is going to be Sanders because Keenum loves throwing to those guys in the slot. Next up, we have lockdown Taywan Taylor, as everyone wants to, crown him as the breakout guy. I mentioned last week, even though he scored that nice touchdown, he only played 1 snap with the first team offense. And again, this week he played as the number 4 wide receiver again. He was in on just 7 of Mariota's 19 snaps. Corey Davis got 18, Tajay Sharp got 12, and Nick Williams got 9. Obviously, Tajay Sharp and Nick Williams aren't really better than Taywan Taylor. They're probably still making him earn it, but it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that Taywan Taylor isn't going to come strong out the gates as people suspected. And obviously, you still have Rashard Matthews, who should be coming back from injury soon enough. Next up, a stock up, Bilal Powell. I don't understand the affection with Isaiah Crowell. He's not as good as people want him to make him out to be, and he's honestly not even the number 1 with the Jets right now. It's actually Bilal Powell. He's running with the ones. He ran with them in the first week of the preseason, and then Crowell missed the second week due to injury. But in this third week as well, got more of the run with the ones. So we definitely have a leader back in New York, and it's Bilal Powell. For some reason, he's coming off the board way below Isaiah Crowell, which I don't understand because he's honestly a more talented running back than Isaiah Crowell. He's never had under 4 yards per carry in his entire career, so I don't get the infatuation with Isaiah Crowell over Powell. Bilal Powell is coming off as the 54th running back on the average draft position right now. Obviously, that's surely to change as people are watching the preseason, but the ADP right now for Crowell is 54 is honestly just criminal. So let's go ahead and fix that by drafting Powell ahead of Crowell. If someone in your league drafts Crowell at the running back 34 ADP that he's going to get right now, just go ahead and celebrate because he's just letting value fall to you. And that means you're in a league where you have a great chance of winning. Go ahead and grab Bilal Powell. His stock is up right now. Next up, let's go ahead and also do another stock up. Let's talk about Christian McCaffrey. Panthers are not holding back. They used him as a featured back again. Overall, throughout the preseason, he's been in on 59 of 66 first string snaps, and CJ Anderson has been on the other 7. So that's really good for Christian McCaffrey's value. The only question I have with him is actually 2 questions. The question is, can he actually withstand the workload of a complete 3-down back in today's NFL? And that ties into the other question, is the question about his offensive line, which is not that good. So that's just a little cause for concern. But in the end, it's really about the health, because the efficiency, while it might not be as great rushing, he's definitely going to get a lot of receptions as well. And if he's getting a full healthy workload, the efficiency won't be a problem. Can he just withstand the workload of that 3-down back, a 20-touch guy in the NFL? I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. But, I do like him as someone to be my RB2 who can finish as a top 5 running back this year. But I definitely would consider getting like CJ Anderson as a handcuff, or I'm not always huge on getting handcuffs, so just get a high upside player later. Maybe you want to go get Christian McCaffrey and then get like Mark Ingram. So if McCaffrey really went down, you could get someone who's going to be an RB1 later in the draft who can come in. Because if McCaffrey's going to get injured, it probably won't be in the first 4 weeks of the season. It'll probably be overtime with all those carries, his just body slowly deteriorating. Speaking of Mark Ingram, I mentioned before Jonathan Williams, he looked like he was going to take the running back 2 role, and he could have had a role in the first 4 weeks. I don't think that's the case anymore. Rotating with Boston Scott a lot and put deep into the fourth quarter and the fourth preseason game. So I think it's just going to be a whole lot of Alvin Kamara, and then we'll see some rotation between Williams and Scott until Mark Ingram comes back. And Kamara has a nice little schedule to start off. He gets the Tampa Bay Bucks, and then Cleveland Browns, which New Orleans should have a positive game script. Then Atlanta should be a shootout, and then New York. So Jonathan Williams' stock is down at the moment right now. Moving on, another stock down. Derrick Henry, Deion Lewis. That's going to be a frustrating situation this year. The problem is between them, they're just going to continue that timeshare. Henry's probably going to have more of an impact in positive game strips, and Deion Lewis in negative game strips. As a result, Deion Lewis is going to be the safer option because he's going to get some work in the first and second down, as well as if they're behind, if they have to do hurry up offense, stuff like that. It's going to be Deion Lewis. And then Derrick Henry has the higher upside because of the fact that he can score double-digit touchdowns because he's such a huge guy. But that also depends on them being in the red zone and, leading, so he has more opportunities to get rushes. So right now, if I had to choose between one of them, I'd probably take Lewis because he's at the lower ADP and he's safer. But it's just a situation I'm probably trying to avoid. I think I found my situations where I've had other players on the board when both of them are available to me, and I just like my other options. One of which includes Kenyon Drake, who I wanted to mention. Adam Gase has talked about wanting to get him more carries. He talked about wanting him to get 20 to 25 carries, as well as like 6 to 8 targets. Now, I know that may just sound like coach speak, but he did talk about last year he wanted to get Ajayi 22 to 25 carries, and he did end up getting a healthy workload before he got traded. So, it's still a good sign just to hear him say it. It's not going to bump him all the way up to a safe, guy that I want to draft in the end of the second round or anything like that. Still, late third round guy. He's starting to go ahead of the other guys for me in that range just because Jay Ajayi's knee injuries are just a question mark right now. Nobody knows. He's missing practice right now. I own him in a couple leagues. I'm not completely worried about him. It's just something we're splitting hairs here. Drake has the positive news coming out of Gase's mouth, and then Ajayi is missing practice, so I just have Drake ahead of Ajayi right now. If the Dolphins could actually be somewhat competitive this year and, actually compete in games and give Kenyon Drake a decent chance to have a decent game script and give him the carries, then he could really bust out and be a value at this pick. He had someone like 15 carries for 102 yards, 6.0 yards per carry in the preseason. He's electric. He's someone, when you watch him on film, you just wonder why isn't the guy touching the ball more. So if he could get a healthy workload, that all depends on Adam Gase and the Dolphins having a neutral to favorable game script so that they have the opportunity to run, which I'm not confident in because the Dolphins don't have a very good roster right now, and Tannehill is just an average quarterback. So I can't say for certain that he's going to have that opportunity. But if he did, then he could definitely return value. I'm definitely starting to warm up to him again. And just a quick note on Ajayi. I know I was saying, I'm not too concerned about his knee injury, and I'm not. So I'd still take him in the same area. I was warming up to him since the last month or so because if you looked at his counts from the end of last year, after he got traded, it gradually improved every single game except for the Super Bowl. I know I've talked about this, but it's just good to repeat. So that will do it for my main stock up and stock down. Also, Luck looked pretty sharp. Just wanted to mention that. So told you I wasn't really worried about that Baltimore performance. So he looks pretty good. So moving on, let's go ahead and talk about some players I love getting, and then some players I think people are going to regret drafting at their AP. There's a couple of players I love. I can't tell you how many drafts that I've done where I've gotten a early running back, first round if I had an early pick like David Johnson, Zeke, Bell, Gurley, something like that. And then at the 2-3 turn, if I had the turn pick or just second and third round, I've ended up with Mixon or Howard. And the thing is, I've ended up actually drafting them. Some drafts I draft Mixon in the second, some I draft Howard in the second. And that all depends on the site I'm playing because every site has different rankings. And while I have my own personal rankings, I use the site's rankings to my advantage because I know how other people are drafting and they're going to be using the site rankings. Like, for example, I did a ESPN draft not too long ago, and Howard is lower on their board because it was a PPR draft, which is understandable. So he was lower than Mixon. So I grabbed Mixon knowing full well that I was going to be able to get Howard in the third. But in a standard draft, I had to draft Howard earlier because he's higher, and then I got Mixon in the third. So it's just something you need to understand. You got to look at what site you're playing on, and then what type of game mode you're playing. Is it standard, half PPR, full PPR, stuff like that? It's just something you always want to keep an eye on and take advantage of. So, like I said, Howard Mixon players I love. I can't tell you how many drafts I've done it. Moving on to players that I think we're going to regret. We'll do one regret here. I think Kareem Hunt is someone people are going to regret because I just don't think they're going to have enough positive game scripts. That defense is awful. It's going to be so bad. It's going to be a defense you're going to want to stream players against. So that's actually why I like Pat Mahomes, because I think they're going to have a lot of negative game scripts and he's going to air it out. And that ties in with Hunt because Mahomes is a risky pass taker. He's going to throw some interceptions, which is just going to compound with their bad defense and put Hunt in a lot of negative game scripts. Now, I do think Hunt can catch some passes out of the backfield, but let's not act like Ware isn't there. He's a good player. He's definitely going to be used a little bit, so that's going to cut into Hunt just a little bit. And along with the negative game script, I just don't think he's going to return the first round value. That's just my belief, and so that's why I think people are going to regret drafting him there. Either Leonard Fournette or Melvin Gordon, who are going in the same area as Kareem Hunt. Moving on, another player that I love to keep the theme, I'll go with running backs, is going to be Mark Ingram. I know a lot of people are saying they want to fade him because of the suspension and then another year of Kamara taking a step, but it does matter the format you're playing. I've talked about this before. If you see me on Twitter, I've talked about it there as well. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Omar Abushaib, OMARABUSHAIB. I'll be tweeting a lot about stuff throughout the season as well. I've talked about it. If you're in an 8-team league, if 8 teams make the playoffs in your league, please don't do an 18 league. Please don't. Join a 10 at least, if not a 12. That's just a little side personal thing. I hate 18 leagues. Some people even do a 16 league. I mean, it's just a joke. So if 8 teams make the playoffs in your league, if you're doing a 12-team league or even a 10-team league, I know some leagues do 8 and 10. If 8 teams make the playoffs, then Ingram is well worth the risk because you are getting a guy who has RB1 upside, missing 4 games when you can get plenty of replacements in the first 4 weeks. And 8 teams make the playoffs, so your margin of error is bigger. So you can lose your first 4 games if you want with Ingram out and still make the playoffs. It's happened to me before. I've lost my first 4 games and then went on 9 straight winning streaks. Obviously, you don't want to put yourself in that situation, but I'm just saying, even if you miss your first 4 games, all you have to do is sneak into the playoffs. And if your team is set with Ingram coming back, then you're going to have a loaded roster. So that's someone I like. If 4 teams make the playoffs in your league, it's a little bit more challenging, but I still like taking him. I just need to be a little bit more smart with my planning and who I draft to replace him for those first 4 weeks because I can't afford to lose as many of those first 4 games as I can if 8 teams make the playoffs. So I'll get someone that's going to be steady, consistent in those first couple of games. You know, maybe one of those running backs that are holding off a rookie, like I mentioned before, like Peyton Barber, who's looking great, Chris Carson, who's looking great, something like that. Moving on, another guy I think people are going to regret drafting from their current ADP is Deshaun Watson, just because that touchdown rate is not sustainable. He's going off as the QB2 in drafts right now, and that's just asinine. I mean, that's crazy. People want to act like, oh yeah, he was the number 1 quarterback within those 5 weeks. Yeah, that's true, but the touchdown rate he has, like, is an all-time historical number, is higher than Tom Brady's career average touchdown percentage, like percentage of passes that are touchdown. That's just not going to happen. Also, even though he was successful last year, like, in terms of fantasy, he actually wasn't as good of a real quarterback as people think. I think he's going to develop and continue to get better. But Hopkins erased a lot of his mistakes. He was actually inaccurate on a lot of passes that just don't show up in the stat sheet just because Hopkins is just the baller that he is. He erases a lot of those errant passes because his catch radius is just so enormous. So yeah, Deshaun Watson, I think he's just going a little bit overdrafted. Same with Jimmy Graham. I know a lot of people are talking about, oh, I want to get Jimmy Graham this year. I love Jimmy Graham. He has Rodgers, best quarterback he's ever had. Yeah, that's true. Rodgers is better than Breeze. Okay, obviously, we all know that. But Graham is 31 years old now. He's going to be 32 during the season. It's not just about the age as well. It's just how he looked. He looked slow last year, and even though he has a double-digit touchdown upside, you're not expecting a whole lot of yards from him. And even though he can get 10 touchdowns, that's already baked into his ADP. He's going in off as the tight end 4 right now, which I don't want that, because if he comes off as the tight end 4, that means that I'm getting him where I already expect him to score 10 touchdowns, because we expect those top 3 tight ends to score 8 to 12 touchdowns and get plenty of yards. You're expecting Jimmy Graham to reach his ceiling by drafting him at the tight end 4. You can't return value. And I always preach, you never draft someone at their ceiling. You try to get them at a value. And that's why I don't want Jimmy Graham. In the same range that you're getting Jimmy Graham, you could get someone like Josh Gordon or Mark Ingram. And then later on, I could wait and get someone like Trey Burton. And players going around the Trey Burton range are like Isaiah Crowell, Devin Funchess. So I'll take Trey Burton and Gordon or Ingram over Jimmy Graham and Isaiah Crowell or Devin Funchess any day of the week. Trey Burton's a guy that I love. Great transition there. His average draft position is the tight end 9, and I love him because he can finish as a top 3 tight end this year. And I know that might be a bold take. Not really. If you think about it, getting that role that is just so fruitful for a tight end. And that Matt Nagy and Andy Reid offense, Travis Kelce was successful. Look at Doug Peterson over there, same offense. Zach Ertz is successful. Now Trey Burton's getting that role. And the Bears didn't just pay him just so he can sit there and look pretty. They paid him so he can be a safety blanket for Mitchell Trubisky. And I have gotten so many shares of Trey Burton because I'm all in on Trey Burton this year. I love the upside. I love his situation. And you're getting him as a tight end 9. This is a classic example of you getting a guy at a value because he can return value. You're getting him as a tight end 9, and he can return as a top 3 tight end. When you draft Jimmy Graham as a top 4 tight end, what are you expecting? You're not expecting him to finish over Gronk. You're not really expecting to get into that top 3. And even if he does, he's only going to return value of 1 spot if he gets to the top 3. You know why you're getting Trey Burton as tight end 9. He gets in the top 3. That's 6 tight end spots you're getting value over. So that's why I love Trey Burton. Another guy that I love is Geronimo Allison in Green Bay. He's really entrenched as the number 3 wide receiver. Before I talked about it, it was question marks whether he is, but he is the entrenched wide receiver 3 there. He's playing as the number 2 in 2 wide sets sometimes because Cobb is a slot wide receiver, doesn't always play on the outside. So you're getting a guy who's at worst the wide receiver 3 for Aaron Rodgers. That's just going to be baller. That's a top 5 offense, no doubt, in that range. And you get 2 quarterbacks in the NFL throwing him passes, and you're getting him dirt cheap. Sign me up for that. I've gotten a lot of Geronimo Allison shares. He's on a lot of my teams. Next up, I want to also talk about another rookie not a rookie, Geronimo Allison's not a rookie, but a rookie that I like is Anthony Miller. I just talked about Trey Burton, but I do love Anthony Miller. He's just, everything that comes out of camp is all positive, rave reviews. You watch him in the games, he's just high-putting balls, mossing players. He's just a guy that I love. I think he actually has a good chance to be the Rookie of the Year this year. That would be like a dark horse Rookie of the Year. I love him. I love John Brown. You're getting John Brown as a wide receiver 61 right now. If you think about John Brown, you have to think about his health because that's the biggest concern with John Brown. He hasn't been healthy. But if you look, in 2015, he was a wide receiver 26. He posted 1,003 yards and 7 touchdowns. And then since 2015, Brown has the 7th highest air yards per target in the NFL. And since 2011, Joe Flacco has the 2nd most passing attempts of at least 30 yards downfield. So that's just a combination that's a match made in heaven. Everything you've heard in camp We've heard about Flacco's new favorite target is John Brown. Talked about it before. I love him over Crabtree at the current ADP, and he actually could end up outscoring Crabtree just outright. So give me a lot of John Brown. These are all guys that I'm getting a lot of shares of if I'm doing the zero wide receiver strategy. If you look at a lot of my rosters, you'll see on the end of all the rosters, I'll have at least a couple of the Geronimo Allison, James Washington, John Brown, Anthony Miller. I'll have at least two to, if not all four of them, just depending on that league and how the draft went. Another guy that I'm fading, I don't like him, and I talked about him, and I'm going to keep talking about him, is Isaiah Crowell. Before, I'll just do a little disclaimer. I know Isaiah Crowell is big. He could get the goal line work just because his size, and he's shown he could score in those short yardage situations before. But his ADP of RB36 is just asinine. He's going ahead of guys like Chris Carson, Payne Barber, Chris Thompson. No. He's not even a starter on his own team. Bilal Powell is an infinitely better running back. He's a better pass catcher as well. The Jets, as well as Sam Donald Hustler, are probably going to have a lot of negative game scripts. And that's Crowell's biggest problem. That was his problem last year in Cleveland. He just didn't have the opportunity. And I just don't think he's that good. So please don't take him. Oh, another guy I forgot to mention in that same range as Geronimo Allison, Miller, those guys. Actually, two players. First one being John Ross. I'm tantalized by his upside. He's just, you don't teach that 4.22 speed. He had a really nice touchdown on the third preseason game versus the Bills. Did a nice little stutter and go. Got past Vontae Davis, and then it was underthrown a little bit, so he had to come back to the ball. Corners caught back up, and then he cut inside and juked the hell out of two DBs and then scored a touchdown. If you haven't seen the video, go look it up. So he's someone I have in a lot of leagues. Tyler Lockett as well, just got paid handsomely. He's in for a increased workload. If he can stay healthy, he could be the guy we're talking about as the biggest steal this year because he's an explosive guy. And out of all the guys I mentioned, he and John Ross, they're both explosive, and they're both the wide receiver 2s on their team. Miller is the wide receiver 2, but there's also Taylor Gabriel there, and there's Trey Burton. John Ross, I like Eifert, but they're getting a limited snap, so I would say Ross is the number 2 outright. With Geronimo Allison, he's the number 3 after Cobb and Devontae Adams, but there's also Jimmy Graham there, and James Washington, he's behind Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. But Tyler Lockett, after Doug Baldwin, there is nobody. It's him. And Doug Baldwin isn't 100%, and he's come out recently and said he's probably not going to be 100% all year. Now, while Doug Baldwin's still going to get his, Tyler Lockett has to get some targets. They lost Paul Richardson. They lost Jimmy Graham. Someone has to get the passing attempts from Russell Wilson because that defense isn't that good. So they're going to be passing quite a bit. And they didn't pay him for no reason. They just gave him a nice big extension. He can stay healthy. He can get a healthy target share. I can see him finishing as a wide receiver 2. He's coming off as a wide receiver 63. He's like the Will Fuller-esque guy. He's a deep threat guy, quick guy, fast guy. I just love Tyler Lockett. It's someone I'm actually trying to trade for if I don't own him right now, or I'm drafting in a lot of my leagues. Talked about Keelan Cole earlier. His ADP is going to shoot up, but he was going a little bit ahead of these guys. He's someone that I like getting. He's going to probably shoot up all the way up until maybe the Jamison Crowder range just because of the injury to Marquise Cole. Another guy that I like is Michael Gallup. I literally just texted someone in one of my leagues trying to trade for Michael Gallup because I love Michael Gallup. People are drafting him as the wide receiver 54 off the board. For some reason, there's this notion that he's not the best wide receiver on the team. He's most clearly the most talented wide receiver on the team, and he's already starting in one wide receiver sets. In the preseason, he was playing as the solo wide receiver, so I don't get this draft position for him. He should be going a lot higher. Chris Godwin, another promising rookie. Okay, that's a lot of players that I love. Let me go into players that I don't love as much. Go ahead and go back to the tight end position. Evan Ingram. I think there's just too many weapons there. Last year was a perfect storm. Odell was hurt. Marshall was hurt. They had nobody out of the running back position. But this year, you're taking him as the ADP tight end 6. Once again, drafting him at his ceiling. Last year, with all the situation being perfect, he finished as the tight end 4. He's not going to finish into the top 3 with all those weapons. It's just not going to happen. He's going to need something to break. You don't just pay Odell the largest wide receiver contract in history just because he's Odell and you want to keep him happy. No, because you're going to feature him. You don't draft Saquon Barkley number 2 overall unless you know you're going to feature him. So Evan Ingram, tight end 6, just not going to be enough. And there's also Sterling Shepard there. I just don't see enough for him to improve on that value more than you're drafting. Like I said, rather wait for Trey Burton. I'll take the upside on Jordan Reed, even Jack Doyle. Maybe just stream the position outright rather than getting Evan Ingram. I'll get someone else instead. Another person that I think is going overrated right now is Carson Wentz. He's still coming off an ACL injury, and his touchdown percentage is just like Deshaun Watson. The unsustainable. That's coming down, and they're not going to want him to be running around a lot as much this year, coming off the ACL, which was one of his biggest assets last year, was his ability to evade pressure and, pick up some yards rushing as well. So he's going off as the ADP QB7. I'd rather just wait. I'll take Big Ben, ADP QB11, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers. Those guys are in the teens, Patrick Mahomes. Or even, I'd rather just wait, get better value instead of going to early QB and get someone in the, a running back or wide receiver at the same time that he's going. Instead of taking Carson Wentz as the QB7, I can go ahead and take someone like Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel, Jamal Williams, Julian Edelman, instead of Carson Wentz. And then I can get a quarterback later in Pat Mahomes or Matt Ryan and get a much better running back earlier. I just rather get the skill positions early when I'm waiting at quarterback in a 1QB league, especially if I'm not getting a top 4. And like I said, I'm only getting Rodgers if he's in the middle, late 4th. And even then, sometimes it depends on how the board fell. That's really what matters. But I'm not taking a quarterback in the top 10 that's not Rodgers or Russell or Cam or Brady later on, and maybe 8 or 9. But top 4 rounds, no. Maybe Rodgers at the middle and late 4th round. Wait at the position. That's just the number one thing. 1QB leagues, you want to wait at the position unless something just happens where Russell Wilson fell to the 8th round or something. Then it's a value. Then you take him because he's my QB2 overall right now. Because I know some guy I was helping him do in draft, Russell Wilson fell to him. He was the QB 6 or 7 off the board. That makes sense. You go ahead and take him because now you're looking at a value. People drafting like Garoppolo and Stafford being stupid, taking him over Russell Wilson. Even though I told him to wait at QB, when Russell's there and you waited and he's a QB7 off the board, you go ahead and you take him. So it's understanding how your draft is going, but with the full intention of you're probably going late QB. Moving on, we'll talk another guy that I don't think is going to return value on his investment, and that's going to be Brandon Cooks. And that's more to do with Jared Goff than it is Brandon Cooks. While I do anticipate Goff takes another year, last year he was kind of woeful in finding Sammy Watkins on deep balls. That's Brandon Cooks' biggest asset. He's played with Drew Brees, then he upgraded to Tom Brady. Now he's doing a massive downgrade to Jared Goff. And as well as you think he's going to play and improve, even if he played at MVP level, we're talking Hall of Fame level for Tom Brady and Drew Brees. You're just not going to find that level of consistency. And there's quite a few weapons over there. You have Todd Gurley, obviously, is going to be featured. Then you have Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. They have some tight ends, Gerald Everett, that they had last year that he might get a little more target share this year. So I just don't love his situation. I'd rather get someone else that's going at the same time as him. I'd rather get Larry Fitz, who's the wide receiver 18, wide receiver 20, Demaryius right after him, even Josh Gordon 21, Allen Robinson 22. I'd rather those guys. They're just safer, and I'm not too happy about the situation over there for Brandon Cooks. Now I'll go back to another guy I love. That's going to be Amari Cooper. In John Gruden's coaching career, he's always had a 1,000-yard receiver. And if you look at the roster, it's not going to be Jordy Nelson. I mean, if it's going to be one guy, it's going to be Amari Cooper. If Jordy Nelson does it and they both do it, I'll be surprised. But you're putting your eggs on Amari Cooper, and they cut Griff Whalen and they traded Ryan Switzer. So that could mean Amari Cooper could open the season as the Raiders' primary slot wide receiver. He's played quite a few snaps from in the preseason from the slot. And if you look at 2016 and 2017, the percentage of routes run from the slot for Amari Cooper has been 18%, and the yards per route run from the slot has been the second best out of 97 wide receivers tracked from the slot in yards per route run. And if you look at yards per route run from the outside, he's 44th best of 83. And that's something, if you look at Matt Harmon's reception perception, Amari Cooper has like a terrible contested catch rate percentage. So he's honestly better off in the slot. If they put him in the slot, he'd be getting a lot of mismatches. Still a fantastic route runner. His route running versus slot corners is going to be a nightmare for defenses and defensive coordinators alike. So I actually like him. I like taking him a lot because Von Gruden, as we have talked about a second ago, has always had a 1,000-yard receiver. And Amari Cooper, he just needs to cut down on the drops. You've seen the upside before, and if he's in the slot, he's going to eat. So those are some of the players that I think I'm fading at their current ADP, and also players that I love. And you'll see me talk about it a lot on my Twitter. I tweet a lot about it. So next I wanted to go into some sleepers. I'll do a sleeper or two, depending on the team, maybe from each team. And then if you had any more questions, like I said, hit me up on Twitter. Start off with the Cardinals. Sleeper from here is going to be Ricky Seals-Jones. Talked about him before. Love his upside. He's going to start off the season by playing as the solo tight end with Jermaine Getcham, probably starting on the pup. He only played 12% of the team's offensive snaps last year, but that's definitely going to see an upgrade. He played near 90% this year in the preseason, so looking for a big year from him. Moving on, the next sleeper from the Cardinals. There's not really many sleepers on this team, but I would actually say Mohamed Sanu because everyone's tantalized by Calvin Ridley, but Sanu is still the number 2 there. And as good as Calvin Ridley's upside there is, you still have to earn the trust of your quarterback. Sanu has the trust of Matt Ryan, so I actually like taking Sanu later in drafts while everyone's reaching trying to get Calvin Ridley because he's just so, such a clean route run and all that stuff. I get Mohamed Sanu because I get him later. So not really a sleeper, but I'd say a bit more of a value. Moving on, Baltimore Ravens, the guy I've talked about a lot, John Brown. Just get him in almost every single draft that I can. Really frustrated in one league. I got sniped right before I wanted him. I was on the turn, so I thought he was going to come back all the way 24 picks later, but he got sniped 1 pick before me. Really bummed about that. So you've heard me talk about it. Flacco plus Brown, deep ball. It's a connection that I'm going to be banking on this year. I love him there. Buffalo Bills. Let's say Chris Ivory. That's the guy who's probably the sleeper there just because something might happen with McCoy legally. I don't think it is, but if it does, you get Chris Ivory, and that's going to be your bell cow there. He's the only guy on that roster right now that can handle a full workload. He can handle 15-plus touches. Carolina Panthers, I'd say, let's go ahead and talk about Curtis Samuel. Everyone loves DJ Moore, and rightfully so. Devin Funchess is, just a guy. He's a good red zone threat, but they drafted Curtis Samuel with the intention of spreading out that offense and, making them more explosive. And Curtis Samuel is still that same guy. He got injured last year. He's played well in the preseason. He's caught 9 of 11 targets for 166 yards in the preseason. And after this year, I think we could be talking about him as the breakout wide receiver from Carolina, not necessarily DJ Moore. DJ Moore is going to be playing well, but someone who's going to return a lot better value is going to be Curtis Samuel because his ADP is a wide receiver at like 105. So that's like a deep sleeper. He's going outside of the top 300 at the position. Chicago Bears, the sleeper is going to be, talked about Trey Burton. He's not really a sleeper because he's going top 10 in his own position. I'll go ahead and say Mitch Trubisky. Everyone knows the name, but he's still not getting the respect. He's going as a QB 22, so barely starting QB in 2 QB 12-team leagues. I think with all the weapons I've talked about it, Anthony Miller, Trey Burton, Allen Robinson, Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, Taylor Gabriel, and then playing under Matt Nagy, he has so many weapons that he's bound for a good year. And if you actually look at it, I don't know a lot of people realize this, but in the last 5 weeks of the season, he was the number 14 fantasy quarterback in 2017. So those last five weeks of 2017, he was a number 14 fantasy quarterback. So the problem last year was he was barely throwing any because of John Fox, and John Fox is an idiot up there with Jeff Fisher for worse coaching. And this year he actually has a good offensive line, so he could be someone who's going to return a lot of investment. He's actually a guy I love getting as my QB2 in 2 QB leagues. So that wraps up the Bears. Moving on to the Bengals, talked about him earlier, John Ross. Wide receiver 76 off the board, 213th overall. He's someone that I love. You don't teach. I can't tell you how many times I'm going to say this. I'm going to keep stressing. You don't teach 4.22 speed. He's been working with TJ Houshmandzadeh this offseason. He's working on his route running, becoming a more well-rounded receiver. They cut Brandon LaFell, so there's targets there to be had. And we've seen what Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones have done alongside AJ Green before as a number 2. So John Ross is someone I love. Moving on to the Browns. The sleeper there is going to be Antonio Callaway. Now, he might not be a sleeper in terms of players, people like fantasy players know who he is, but he's the wide receiver 3 on that team, and he's going off as the wide receiver 103 and the 324th player off the board, so he's way deep down there. Now, Josh Gordon is not going to start week 1. Hugh has said that. Hugh Jackson has said that. Obviously, he's still going to play, as he said. But I just think that the Browns, as much as they're going to improve, they're still not going to be favored in a lot of games. So they're going to have negative game scripts, and there's going to be a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So with the attention going to Josh Gordon, Njoku, and Landry, Callaway could be someone who gets one-on-one coverage. And he's a first-round talent that only fell to the 4th round because of his off-field concerns. So he can definitely beat one-on-one coverage in the NFL, and he can succeed. So he would be the sleeper. Moving on to the Dallas Cowboys, the sleeper for that team, I would say, is Tavon Austin. People know the name, but he's not really going drafted in any leagues. So he's someone that I like taking just because I know it's a lot of coach speak. He's a wide receiver 90 off the board, 280 overall. But they talk about them wanting to get him a lot of touches. But that's not really necessarily why I want to draft him. I mean, obviously that's good to hear him say that. But they're going to face a lot of stacked boxes. Cowboys, when they face up against teams are going to want to stack the box and stop seek. And the best way to beat that is to do some bubble screens, some quick RPO, stuff like that. And that's where Tavon Austin comes in because he's electric on the boundary. He's a Cowboys version maybe of Tyreek Hill-esque type of thing. So I think he could be useful in PPR leagues. You know, he gets a lot of touches just so he can get the ball quick out of Dak's hands and away from a stacked box. Moving on to the Denver Broncos, the sleeper would be Jake Butt. His current ADP is 221, overall tight end 27. He's someone that you're probably going to end up streaming during the year, maybe if he has a plus matchup, but I think he could kind of have a nice little breakout. He lost last year to a torn ACL, so he missed the season. Now the competition of targets in Denver is going to be kind of tight because of Sanders and Thomas and Cortland Sutton, but at tight end, there's nobody really there, just Jeff Heuerman and Austin Taylor, and that's not really anyone that's hard to beat out. And Case Keenum has said that Butt continually wants the ball, which is something that Case Keenum loves to hear. He's not going to be top 3 tight end, but he could be someone that's a valuable streamer throughout the year, someone to keep an eye on. Moving on to the Lions, the sleeper I want to say would be Theo Riddick. I know the Lions traded up to get Kerryon Johnson, and I love Kerryon Johnson. But why are we acting like Theo Riddick is still not on this roster? Like, Aaron Blunt's going to get his goal line work, and Kerryon Johnson's going to be sprinkling in between the 20s and get some receiving work. But Theo Riddick is still a good receiving back. He's still one of the best. He's still going to get his. He's going as the running back 57 off the board and 161st overall. 57th is criminal. That's going to get near guys like Dante Foreman, who's going to start on the pup, Austin Eckler, who's a backup, Jordan Wilkins, Matt Breida. I mean, those guys are more understandable, but to go around Austin Eckler, that's kind of a shame because he's in PPR leagues. This is not obviously not standard, but half PPR, kind of PPR for sure. Theo Riddick is going to be a useful guy, someone you can stick into the flex in game weeks where you know that the Lions are going to be behind, stuff like that. I just wanted to say he would be the sleeper for the Lions. Moving on to the Green Bay Packers, the sleeper is someone who I've mentioned a lot, Geronimo Allison, wide receiver, 68 ADP overall, 183 overall, wide receiver 68. I've been saying it for a while. He's the wide receiver 3 on that roster, but sometimes he's going to be in 2 wide receiver sets playing. So anyone who's going to get on the field that much in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense is going to be a valuable asset. I've said it before. We've seen James Jones score 14 touchdowns out of the 3rd wide receiver role with Aaron Rodgers. So someone I'm getting a lot in the late rounds. Moving on to the Houston Texans, we got someone who I haven't mentioned a lot, but I do like, Kiki QT. He's a really good wide receiver. I liked him coming out of college. He's going to be the slot wide receiver there. He's going to take over Bruce Ellington soon enough. Bruce Ellington is just an average guy. Will Fuller has had his fair share of injury problems, and he's actually injured right now. I believe he has a hamstring injury. So Kiki QT could be someone who gets some snaps. He's definitely going to get snaps. He could definitely get some targets there. And with all the attention going to Hopkins, he's going to get some one-on-one in the slot, and he could be someone who you get good value off of spot starts in the flex spot. Moving on to the Colts, the logical answer would be saying maybe one of the running backs like Naheem Hines or Jordan Wilkins, but people know about those guys, and also it's just going to be a messy situation. So I'll go at wide receiver position. I'll say Ryan Grant. He's wide receiver 92 overall, ADP, wide receiver 92 and 283 overall. And he's the number 2 for Andrew Luck. I just talked about Allison being the wide receiver 3 for Aaron Rodgers. But now we're talking about the wide receiver 2 for Andrew Luck. We've seen Moncrief be very successful. So the Colts are going to have a pretty good offense because Luck is still a pretty good quarterback. The defense isn't elite by any means, so he's probably going to have a lot of negative game scripts, which means more passing. And Chester Rogers, who is he? He's a guy. He's not that good. Grant is a good guy. He played well last year with the Redskins. And he's going to want to go out there and prove it. He got screwed over by the Ravens when they took away his deal. Like, that was so wrong of them. So he's in this 1-year deal. He's going to want to prove it. He could be someone who's he's going to finish the season. He could finish the season as a wide receiver 3. Moving on to the Jaguars. The sleeper for them, I would say, is going to be now after the injury. I'll say DJ Chark. He's a wide receiver 4 right now, but they drafted him early, even though they had so many wide receivers on the roster. And I just think he's going to beat out Moncrief for the other outside spot with Dere staying in the slot. DJ Chark is just a really good wide receiver. You don't keep that size at 6'4". I think he's going to be a nice guy for Blake Bortles to throw to. He loved throwing to Robinson and his big size. Just go up and get it. Lessen the chance of interception if you just put in where only your wide receiver can get it. Moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs. The sleeper from there is Spencer Ware. And I talked about it before. And this is more so just because I think Kareem Hunt is still going to be the lead back. But if anything were to ever happen to Kareem Hunt, you're talking about it every week, RB1. I still think Spencer Ware is going to find his way to have a little bit of standalone value in this offense. And that's just because he's a pretty good receiving back, and they're going to have some negative game scripts. Moving on to the Chargers, the guy that I like here, I love Mike Williams. I've talked about him before, but I'm going with the other Williams, and that's Tyrell Williams. Because everyone wants to talk about Mike Williams, and rightfully so. He has all the talent. Went 7th overall last year for a reason. But Mike Williams is going off as the wide receiver 50. Well, Tyrell Williams is going off as a wide receiver 67. People don't understand. Tyrell Williams is playing in 2 wide receiver sets right now. I don't see why it's 17 gap difference in favor of Mike Williams. So Tyrell Williams, all in for that. He's been successful in previous years. No Hunter Henry. Yeah, that helps Keenan and Mike Williams, but also helps Tyrell Williams. Dolphins, Danny Amendola, Albert Wilson, both of them I like there. Only situation is I like Albert Wilson a little bit more in terms of a long-term perspective because I don't like predicting it, but it's most likely going to happen. Danny Amendola is going to get hurt. I just know it as a guy who watches pitches all the time. I know he's going to get hurt, and that's also because Tannehill is going to kill him. He's going to feed him early and often. He's going to hit him on a quick slant and go or something, and he's just going to get cracked by the safety. And I just seeing it happen already in my eyes. He's already had some throws in camp where the beat reporters there, Omar Kelly, has said like if that was a real game, he would have been killed. So I like Albert Wilson in the long term. He can play inside and outside. Parker is banged up right now, and Jarvis Landry's gone, so there's some targets to have. In the short term prospect, Danny Amendola could see some guy. Now, if Danny Amendola were to stay healthy the whole year, he's definitely someone I like. So both of them are good here. Vikings guy I like here is Laquan Treadwell, and I've talked about it before with Adam Thielen being in the slot. Laquan Treadwell is a outside receiver and 3 wide receiver sets, so he can definitely find his way into some targets. And if Kirk Cousins likes him, we haven't seen it with Case Keenum last year, but Laquan Treadwell healthy another year, hopefully outside wide receiver and 3 wide receiver sets, he could be a nice little sleeper. I forgot to mention the Rams. I skipped them. I was trying to go in alphabetical order, but I skipped the Rams. 2 guys here. John Kelly, obviously, I talked to him so much. If anything happens to Todd Gurley, like Spencer Ware, Kareem Hunt, he's going to be an RB1. He's looked so good in preseason, and that just annoys me. I wish he was drafted to another situation because he could be a 3-down back in today's NFL. And if he was drafted somewhere else other than behind like Todd Gurley or Zeke or DJ or something like that, he could have been like really successful this year. The other guy is Gerald Everett. I mentioned him earlier when I was talking about Dalvin Cook, but Gerald Everett was drafted last year for a reason. He's kind of going unnoticed, but tight ends at some point, even as good as your wide receivers are going to be, you need some tight ends to produce, especially in the red zone. He averaged 15.3 yards per catch as a rookie, and he had one like really good outing in week 2. Another season of development under his belt, going alongside his fantastic athletic ability with that great offense under Sean McVay. I could see him being as a sneaky stream guy. Moving on back to the Patriots, I did the Vikings. Patriots, the guy I would say here is Dorsett, and that's just because he's the wide receiver 2 right now, kind of out of necessity. He has to be. They cut Jordan Matthews, Eric Decker retired. People want to talk about Des Bryant. He's still not there yet. Edelman suspended the first 4 weeks. Dorsett is the number 2 on the roster in terms of wide receiver, and Brady trusts him. He might not have the trust level of Gronk, but he seems to trust him enough. He made a big catch in the AFC Championship. Brady trusted him in that, important game to throw in that pass that actually ended up leading to a touchdown, I believe, on that drive. So someone that you can get later on in a draft. He's really good. He's coming off as the wide receiver 93, 290 overall. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints, Ben Watson, the ever-aging Ben Watson, 37 years old, but he's tight end 23 overall, 203 overall, but he's playing with Drew Brees. He's coming off a year he played with Joe Flacco, but now he's playing with Drew Brees, and Drew Brees, we've seen him, he likes to throw into his tight ends. And with all the attention going to Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, Ben Watson can still get his. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get 1,010, but he can get quite a few red zone targets, get some red zone touches, great spot start, fill-in, streamer type guy. The Giants, moving on to them, he's not a sleeper by any means, but for me, it's going to be Eli Manning. And when I say he's not a sleeper, it's because everyone knows him. He's a 2-time Super Bowl winner. But Eli is someone that's being disrespected. He's going up as the QB 23-ish range right now in terms of ADP. And if you're saying that Saquon Barkley is going to be a first-round pick and Odell Beckham is going to be like a first-round pick, and you like Sterling Shepard and you like Evan Ingram, all these guys, that means Eli Manning is going to have a good year. So why are we not drafting Eli Manning like that? He's QB 23 overall, and that's just a steal. Like I said, I like Mitchell Trubisky in this range. I like Eli Manning in this range. Great QB2s to have. And he's playing under Pat Shermer. Look what Pat Shermer just did to Case Keenum last year. He made Case Keenum into an afterthought from Jeff Fisher into a really good quarterback in the NFL and in fantasy football. So someone I love there. Sleeper for them. New York Jets, Quincy Enunwa. People forget he had a pretty good year 2 years ago. Last year, he missed the whole year because of a neck injury, but he's back. I love Robbie Anderson this year, but we haven't seen Sam Darnold play like a full season with any of these guys, so we don't know who his go-to guys are. It could end up being an Enunwa because Enunwa plays closer to the line of scrimmage, push on the slot. Rookie QBs tend to want to find the higher upside catch players, like, more likely to make a catch, are the slot guys, not the boundary receivers playing number one corners in the NFL. So Nuno is a guy that I like in this situation. Moving on, we have the Oakland Raiders. The pick I'm going to go with here is not going to be someone that's an unknown, but it's just that he's not being drafted that highly, and that's Martavis Bryant. Now, full disclaimer, there was some reports that he wasn't understanding the offense earlier in this offseason, things like that. But at wide receiver 62 and player 170 overall, I think he could return value on investment. As well as Jordan Nelson as well. They said he's looked. I mean, he's an older guy. Obviously, everyone looks fresh when you start the season. If you ever notice, if you have an older guy, he's going to look great because he's done this for 10 years or whatever. First few weeks of the season, he eats up, and then you think that they're going to be a great fantasy commodity for the rest of the year. Then they start tailing off. So if you do have some older guys, that's actually some strategy I've employed before. I got the older guys because, they produce. Like someone like in recent memory who used to always do it, Steve Smith. Before he retired, he would first couple weeks of the season, he would ball out because he's done the grind before. He knows what it takes to mentally and physically prepare for the season compared to the younger guys, and he takes off. But then towards the end of the season, he's starting to pick up injuries, tail off, and the young guys are getting more in tune with it. So I would get a couple of the older guys that play well, and then I trade them, sell high, buy low on some other players. But back to Martavis Bryant, they traded Ryan Switzer, and they cut Griff Wallen, as mentioned earlier, so there's some targets to go around there. Not that we were projecting them for a whole lot of targets, but Amari Cooper is going to be playing in a slot, and Martavis Bryant's playing on the outside with Jordan Nelson in three wide receiver sets, and Derek Carr has a fairly good arm, so he can find him deep. He's just another later guy that could return value on investment. Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, this is some guy I really love. With Alshon Jeffrey missing a couple games, I like him even without that. I was kind of bummed that they traded for Mike Wallace because it kind of messes up his value. But the guy that I like is Mac Hollins. He's really talented. He's going undrafted. His way out there. I shouldn't even mention where he's being drafted. It's not even registered on Fantasy Pros as average draft position. That's how late he's going. So that's a deep sleeper I'm talking about. But if you watch last year, he turned 22 targets into 16 receptions, got a touchdown, 226 yards. It's that deep play threat. So that's why I was kind of bummed that Mike Wallace was traded there, but I still like him. He's really talented, and they're going to want to give him more snaps because Jeffrey is out injured, and he's the future of that wide receiver corps, possibly. Moving on to the Steelers. I talked about it before. James Washington. He's such a really good wide receiver, and we've seen players be successful as a wide receiver 3 in the Steelers offense, even rookies. Last year, Juju Smith-Schuster, and then before that, Martavis Bryant. Another guy I like there is Vance McDonald. He got traded right before the season last season, so his role was slow out the gate, but he gradually got better, and he posted a couple of good performances, 4 catches, 52 yards. PPR, that's 9 points right there, and then he can get you some touchdowns. He's going to be someone, if you're punting the position, if you want to stream later with him and ASJ, something like that, he's going to be someone that's pretty valuable. Moving on to the 49ers, Matt Breida is looking at to be the Tevin Coleman to the Devontae Freeman for Jerick McKinnon, the backup guy who we've seen be successful in their own right, especially if something were to happen to Jerick McKinnon. Matt Breida could have a nice little role there. And now we can also even mention Alfred Morris as an even deeper sleeper. I know they just signed him, but he's played in this Kyle Shanahan offense before, so he knows what it takes to be successful in this offense, and that's when he had his best years. So if something were to happen to McKinnon, Alfred Morris could be a nice little option there. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, we have a lot of targets here. I talked about Tyler Lockett, so he'd be one that I love getting late. He's a nice little sleeper later on. Also, another guy that I like here is Nick Vannett. Someone needs to replace some tight end production loss from Jimmy Graham. He's going off as a tight end 44, 351st overall. And I know there's Jerron Brown there, who's also a decent sleeper, but Russell Wilson needs to throw to someone in the tight end position. They got Ed Dixon there, but he's like 31. He's an old guy. He's not that good. He's had like one good game last year, even though Olsen was injured. In that time, he only had like that one huge game, but outside of that, it was nothing. Jimmy Graham and Luke Wilson left, so someone needs to replace some of that tight end protection, and I think it's going to be Nick Vannett. Moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we have my guy right here that I like is Chris Godwin. He's competing with Adam Humphries for the wide receiver 3, but there has been talk about kicking Deshaun Jackson into the slot, which would favor Chris Godwin playing outside. And with Jameis Winston coming back later on, he could be someone who gives you a nice little upside with all the attention that Mike Evans is going to get and Brayton Howard inside. He gets a little 1v1. He came on strong last year. He was the number 14 fantasy wide receiver over the final 4 weeks of last season. So, someone that I like there. Titans, the sleeper here is going to be Taywan Taylor. I talked about it earlier. He was still running as a wide receiver 4, but Tajay Sharp and the players playing ahead of him are not that good. And even though Rashard Matthews is coming back and Corey Davis, I like them all, but he's still going to be an explosive guy. And when I talk about these late round sleepers, we're taking high upside chances. So usually a lot of these guys are going to be explosive, like Tyler Lockett, like Tavon Austin, Taywan Taylor, and they're better in PPR because they're the type of players where the team's going to want to get the ball in their hands because they're so explosive. So just getting a catch gets them that extra point. So he's a guy like here. He's going off as a wide receiver 73, 214 overall. Lastly, we have the Redskins. Sleeper here is going to be Josh Doctson. And I know I've talked about it. I love Crowder this year, Jordan Reed, because Alex Smith likes throwing to those short and intermediate routes. But Josh Doctson's still going to get a good target share, and he wins a lot 50-50. That's kind of how he is. Alex Smith throws him enough passes, which I think he will. He's going to be a nice little return on investment. And he's going as a wide receiver 54 and 151st player off the board overall. So you're not investing too much into him. He's going after some defenses like the Broncos defense and the Houston Texans defense, Chargers. I mean, that's just criminal. He shouldn't be going after defenses. Even Justin Tucker is being drafted ahead of him, which is just, outright wrong. Alex Smith as well. He's going off as a QB 18, and I just talked about it. I kind of like these weapons for him. I mean, they're not as good necessarily as last year, just because Kelsey's probably better than Reed because of injury concerns. He doesn't have a Tyreek Hill here. Kareem Hunt is better than any running back on this roster, but they do have Jameson Crowder, which is something they didn't really have there. They had Albert Wilson, but Crowder is a better player. Things like that. It's a good offense to be in, and he's going off as QB 18. And I think he can actually be a top 10 quarterback this year. He's steady. He's a steady guy. He's a great guy if you want to stream. I think he offers that rushing upside that it's just sneaky rushing upside. If you look at it with Kirk Cousins there, he would always get like 4 to 5 rushing touchdowns a year. And that honestly was not necessarily just a factor of Cousins being able to rush, but also some play calling inside the red zone because he did a couple of QB keepers there. But they did like a fake run with the running back, to end around with the QB. So, I mean, I like Alex Smith. And that's going to go ahead and wrap up all the sleepers, as well as wrap up the podcast for today. So, sorry about the sound quality. It might not be as good as usual. Just want to push this out before we have the final sets of drafts this weekend. Hit me up on Twitter at OMARABUSHAIB. That's at Omar Bashad. Feel free to send me any questions. I can answer your questions. Send me a DM. Here to help. Good luck to all the people drafting this weekend. And let's get ready for football. Less than a week away. Let's go.